Play live. Okay, hey guys, my name is Trixie, aka the Thoughtful Beast. Welcome to the live show. Today I have Molly. Molly is here. She's going to talk about leading while learning. Before we do that, let me first say that there's a link down there that says donate. It's to Dee Dee McClure's SD Bail Fund. That's our local bail fund in San Diego. Remember that there's still protests going on, even though the news isn't showing it. So yes, please donate if you can, if that's available to you. And then, Molly, before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Great. Hi, everybody. Hi, Trixie. First of all, thank you for having me on. I was honored and surprised to get an invite from you. So I'm so grateful to be able to have this opportunity, and this is such a cool platform to be able to just talk and have a really open, honest conversation. So I am a dancer. I grew up as a dancer. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. I lived in Texas, got my degree in dance there, and then moved to San Diego and worked kind of in the private studio world until it sucked my soul out. And I realized that that is not the type of environment where I think I was going to thrive. So I found that outreach work was kind of my jam, and I was working with City Moves, which was way back before Young Audiences was Young Audiences. And then I started working with them, found Malashok Dance. And when I started teaching outreach for Malashok, they were just moving into Liberty Station. So it was 2007. And they were building a school for the very first time. And I'm so passionate about arts education and dance education. And I was lucky enough to fall in to that organization at a time where I could contribute. And so started teaching, helped kind of found the school and its programs, and then went on from there, did program management, and then was managing director, and now I'm executive director.
Hey!
Here I am.
That's awesome. Wow, that was cool. It's cool, you know what I mean? Like seeing like the line of how it goes. That's really cool. And that's really awesome. And thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited to have like a conversation, especially because it's about our community and about something really important. So addressing racism, addressing I switched my, and you know this, but for people who for some reason don't know yet, for maybe new people tuning in, I shifted my live show that I started in quarantine. Not shifted, but I guess I refocused on amplifying Black voices, addressing racism in my own culture. And then like now I want to address it in my local community, because for me, that's really important. This is, like I was saying to Molly, like right before we started, like this is where I live and this is where I want to live. So, since I know where I'm going to be for the rest of my life, hopefully, I want the community to get better. I don't want to just be a person who like complains and doesn't do anything, when that's really easy to do. And I'm not saying at all that I never complain. That would be such a lie. Like I complain, but like I also at some point I'm like, I need to do something and do something helpful. So like I said, that's kind of where my platform is. I do consider all of this mental health issues, like having these conversations, having hard conversations, listening to people in different perspectives, being open, especially when a lot of us, even though a lot of us are going to the same thing, like there's so many different sides to it. It's so nuanced all the way around. So I feel like also having open conversations with different people will hopefully end in not even like, well, maybe sometimes it's about changing people's views, but more so also like how do we actually find solutions that actually help us move forward in the way that we want?
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. So
sure.
what does leadership mean to you, Molly, as an executive director?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great place to start. There's, I think, often the misconception that that management and leadership are interchangeable. And being a manager is really the systems and the day-to-day and creating the structure of an organization, keeping it running. And leadership, really, to me, it's creating a culture where people feel invited to contribute, and where they can thrive, and where they know where their place is, in alignment with a larger goal. And that leadership is a real privilege, to be able to kind of sit in a place where you can gather information, where you can create a safe space for people to work with you, where they feel valued, and appreciated, and then to be able to affect change, and to deliver programs. In my case, as a nonprofit, that's our goal, is to center around this mission, and deliver. So leadership is really, to me, about creating a culture where people can thrive.
For everyone who doesn't know, and I know I've read this, but I can't recite it off of my head. What is the organization you work for? What is their mission statement?
To promote dance as an avenue for personal expression through participation, education, and collaboration.
Great, wonderful.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's short, but it's really packed.
Yeah.
So often, like, when we create programs, that's kind of our checklist. Like, are people participating? Is there an educational element? And is there a collaborative sense? And those are three really cool places to kind of check yourself whenever you're trying to create or develop something, to serve the public. It's awesome to be able to kind of have that in your mission, just as like 3 boxes, like, are we really doing the work? To be able to come back to that. So sometimes mission statements are like super long and wordy, and it's like, I like this one because we can always come back and reference it and say, hey, are we really doing the right work? Okay.
That's true. I think mission statements are really important for organizations and businesses as well. Just so it's like everyone's clear, on what you're doing. Mission statements like don't only just help the organization stay on track, but just help other people understand what you're about. And it's true, when they get really lengthy and wordy, sometimes you're just like, wait, what? Wait, what did you say? Like, what?
I have to read it like 14 times to like get through all the lingo and the jargon to like, wait, what does that actually mean? Yeah. Like, what does that look like? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to be like, okay, and I'm going to say this too, like, writing a mission statement is hard. Like, I've been trying to write my own mission statement, and like I've gone through like a million different versions because I'm like, this is really lengthy, wordy. And when I have my boyfriend read it, he's like, wait, what? And I'm like, crap. Yeah.
It is. It's super hard. And we've changed. I mean, since I've been with the organization, we have rewritten our mission statement. And man, that was I can't believe like the lengthy process and how many voices contributed and like how many things we heard to be able to like land on something. It's quite a process.
Yeah. So how did things change for Malashok once we got into quarantine? Because that was like, like that's like 2020, like everything is inside, like, and also not with other people. So
yeah. I mean,
for you guys.
So, it's really like the moment I realized like oh my gosh, something is really big is happening right now, and that is going to change literally every facet of my existence, was we had a fundraiser planned, and it was kind of swanky and very nice, but it was going to be an indoor event, and it was really catered towards some like the population that's going to be older. And so we had a meeting with our board, And we have some young people on the board and we have some older people on the board. And there was this like total divide based on age that the older people were like, no, it's canceled. Like, this is not happening. Like, there is no way that people are going to show up to this. And the younger people were like, really? Really? Is it going to be that bad? And this was before shutdown. This was like the week before everything happened. And the younger crowd, we were just kind of like, oh, wow, is it really going to be that bad? Or do you think things are going to shut down? And then the next week, San Francisco shut down. And by 1 week's date from that board meeting, San Diego was in lockdown. And we were like, oh, okay. So now our classes are on hold. We don't know for how long. We are canceling our spring performance. We're canceling our 2 fundraising events. That's all of our revenue. Like, are we going to be able to pay people? You know, how long is this going to last? We don't know. Everybody went home. Everybody started working from home. Thank goodness for Zoom, right? And we just started being very kind and gentle with each other. Really just like shifting our expectations. We are all trying to figure out, how do we deliver online classes? What does that look like? Are people interested in it? How do our teachers feel about doing that? Do we have the resources? What if they don't have space in their apartment to teach?
Yeah.
How do we keep them working? And then, you know, just being in that first period for me, mental health wise, was very difficult personally. I had a really hard time adjusting to being at home all day and not being social. I live alone. I'm an extrovert, so like I wasn't getting the energy that I needed to refill and feel like a human. And at the same time, the expectation, you know, as the executive director, it felt very much like I have to have the answers. Like, there's no one else to ask. So I'm going to have to tell my staff what the next step is, and how in the world am I supposed to know what the next step should be? This is unprecedented. So luckily I have like amazing, supportive, kind people around me who all of us just created this culture of like kindness and patience with each other. And then it was like, okay, now I'm going to spend all my time becoming an expert in government loans. Okay, you know,
Yeah.
a degree in dance, you know.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So it became just navigating. I feel like I've been more busy than ever. So it's just navigating all of this new territory and trying to hear and listen to teachers and stay connected with everybody, even though we're not able to really connect.
Yeah.
So it's, COVID has, it's kind of affected every facet of my work, of my life. But at the same time, it's the whole performing arts industry trying to reimagine what are the performing arts if we can't perform live? What is that? What is dance education if their schools are closed?
Yeah. And like, you know, there's that love-hate relationship with Zoom, because you're like, oh, thank goodness it exists, like that half, and the other half of like, I hate this. Like, because it's just like, we're so lucky that Zoom existed, because like Skype didn't really do their job and didn't really, I don't know what they did. My boyfriend was like, they made a product, didn't want to improve it, and they're like, you know, and Zoom. So we are really lucky that Zoom is here, and it's kind of like we're in this place where it's like it's better than nothing, but it is so hard. And like, I can't imagine being an extrovert. Like, I'm an introvert, so even though this sucks, like it's not like that for me, and I don't live alone either. So if I need that, like, it's easy for me. Like, it must be so hard. And the thing with like dance, and I forgot who was saying this to you. I might have been saying this to you the other day, is you know, like for a lot of us, that is our social time. Even if we're not talking necessarily to each other, we're just like in a room together and like missing that kind of energy. And you know, teachers do the best they freaking can, man, like teaching dance and trying to feel connected, but it's just really hard. Like, it's just really different. So, and
dance is so tuned into the energy in the room, and you're feeding each other, and there's this beautiful thing that happens psychologically and physiologically when you're moving in unison and you're experiencing something together. And without that, it does feel kind of hollow. You know, it's not the same experience. And like you said, like, teachers are doing the very best they can, and they're doing a killer job. But it's hard. And so, you know, recently we were talking about taking classes outdoors, and it was like, okay, but yeah, we're not going to be able to do floor work. You know, there's certain things that are going to be really different and difficult to teach technically, but all those other things that are missing, like moving in unison and feeling other people's energies and seeing them, maybe that's the focus of outdoor classes, and maybe that's the importance, you know? But to be able to have to like pick and choose is, you know, it's just such a new experience, and everybody's just trying their best to embrace it, you know?
Yeah. And that's, yeah. And so like quarantine has just been like level one. Like, it's so many things are happening. So like for me, in my head, I'm like, quarantine is level one. And then like the next big shift that happened, even though we're still all dealing with COVID and we're dealing with lockdowns and what does that really mean? And, you know, being tested, running out of tests, being like, and then being like, oh, okay, some places are open, and just dealing with all of that is still hard now. But for me, like the second thing that made like a big shift in life was the Black Lives Matter, not the start of the movement, obviously, because it already started years before, but everything changing and surging, the momentum picking up in June. And I mean, I don't remember when I first contacted you. I think I contacted you like a month ago.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. We talked and I booked you like way in advance. For me, way in advance. I think for other people, they're like, yeah, you should do this in advance. But I'm me. So I booked you months in advance. And so I asked, so everyone knows, like I asked Molly because I was just like, you know, I was on Facebook because everyone's on Facebook a lot. And I was just seeing her personal posts, you know, about like talking about go to protests, talking about like listening, and talking about like addressing your own community, like addressing white people. That's really weird. Just whatever. That's what it is. It's like address, you know, like the same way I address like Filipinos and Asians. Mm-hmm. Like, and I was just like, oh, cool, because it's really hard to do, and it's really hard to talk to your own family members and friends and just like people you all thought you were on the same page, and then when it turns like out it's not, it's very hard to have those conversations. And so I saw Molly doing that on social media, and for me I was like, that's really cool, because also doing that in public is like a big thing, especially because you are the leader of an organization, you know, and not everyone's going to agree.
Oh yeah, I've heard it from all angles. Sure.
Yeah. So how was that shift, and how did you approach that with your organization?
Yeah. You know, obviously I think all of us, you know, I can't, my therapist always says, don't say everyone has the same experience, but a lot of us, you know, really did feel like that sort of second wave, and there was a sense of helplessness and loneliness that was happening because of COVID. And so in that context, when, you know, George Floyd was murdered and this surge of action started to happen, it felt like, okay, this is a second trauma, and there's something I can do about this. Like, there's some way that I can participate. I feel so helpless around COVID, but this is this thing that I can show up for. And so, you know, just personally, I felt very moved. And, you know, the first protest that I went to was in La Mesa, and it was happening just a few blocks from where I used to live. And I was so glad, because I was sitting there, you know, with my significant other, and we're talking all day and just reading articles and like, just digesting all of this information. And finally we just like looked at each other and we were like, why are we not there right now? Let's go. So we just got up. I'm in my flip-flops and tank top and just kind of like naively was like, let's just go. So, that was such an important step because what I experienced was a community expressing themselves in like a very clear way. And everything from parking in a neighborhood and seeing that all the residents had water and milk out, on the curb for people who were parking there and walking to the protest. Like I immediately just stepping out felt that there was this sense of support and community. Got down there, I felt completely safe the entire time. And it was late. It was probably like 10 o'clock at night. We felt just like everybody was kind of like fist bumping. Everybody's wearing masks. It felt like a very peaceful, meaningful experience. There were a ton of people there. We watched a handful of people walk across an intersection and go light the bank on fire. And we're looking a half a block this way at the cops who are not moving. We're looking a half a block this way at the bank on fire, going up in flames. And we were like, how is this going to play out on the news? And of course, that's all you saw. You didn't see any of the peaceful protesters. You didn't see, the cops in riot gear. You didn't see any of that. All you saw was just like how terrible these rioters are, And it's like, oh, wow, that was such an important thing for me to be present and experience what it was really like versus what you're going to see in the media. So that was kind of my first like big wake up call of like, it is important to show up to this. And then, trying not to center myself or take selfies of myself or, all of those things. And you're learning as you go, right? Like, what are those missteps? And, so it just became, well, this is one way that I can show up. And like you said, like I am a white cis woman talking to other white people. And, a lot of my family is, on the other side of this, and it's very heartbreaking and difficult. And those conversations are very difficult. Navigating kind of the call out versus call in, I would get really upset, as you do with family members sometimes, and kind of get into it with people, and that hurts, and it's risky because you're like, am I going to damage this relationship? Well, what's more important, and where do I really stand on this? And so it's been a real journey for me, and also resisting, my personality type to like go, and taking a step back, slowing down, listening, learning, and figuring out how can I do it better? How can I show up? What is being an ally? All of those questions, constantly asking myself so that I am able to make this a marathon and not a sprint.
Yeah. And that's like, it's difficult. Like I'm newer to this too. And it's really weird because it's just like, when I think about like before things, I wish I had a better phrase than like really heated up, but I don't right now. So I'm just going to use that. Before things really heated up, and people were in a mass being like more aware, like in general, like more aware, like you think back and just being like, like I thought of myself as an ally to many people, and then like realizing like, what does that mean actually? And what does that mean now? What does activism actually mean? Like, what do these words really mean? Especially with like allyship, because it's like, you could say you're an ally, especially what comes to mind for me is like LGBTQ plus ally, right? And you're like, of course I'm an ally, but it's just like, well, are you though? Like, who are you an ally for? Like, what do you do? Just because like you quietly or just kind of like casually say like, of course, like I'm good with these people. Like, of course, like I'm for the Black community. Of course this, of course that. But it's just like looking back at my own actions and I'm like, really, am I though? Like, I wasn't like against it, but like looking at a lot of my silence about things or just acceptance of how things are, accepting systemic racism, like that whole notion, that whole mindset of like, well, this is just how it is.
Right.
And it's just like looking at that and being like, well, I wasn't the best ally now, was I? Like,
that's right.
Coming to that conclusion, being like, well, okay, great.
I feel like that's every day for me, like that's part of what I am trying to embrace is like, this is a process. You don't wake up one day and you're a perfect ally. You don't,
Yeah.
It's a process and trying every day to also like really reflect on myself. Like I'm a huge mental health advocate, and if I know we're going to talk real talk. So, I know that I was in a relationship for 17 years. I was married for 14 years with someone who suffered from debilitating depression. And so when you exist that way for so long, one of the things that manifests is like a savior reaction, right? Because that was survival. And that trauma, losing him to suicide and then moving on, like that resurfaces and plays out in areas that are not obvious to you when it's happening, so the desire to help comes from maybe a really deep relevant place that needs to be acknowledged to myself, that like, maybe this didn't play out properly, but it's coming from this other place, and just like trying to have the self-awareness and work through those difficult issues to understand why maybe you have these tendencies, and why they're not healthy.
Yeah. That's so like important, like to recognize, like being a savior, right? Like those things, like having a savior complex, like, and how to like really make sure you're not doing that. And then also, what does white savior look like? And a lot of people are saying it now. And I think it's a thing that we obviously like, we need to be aware of it. And it's just like, and I want to bring it up too, because like, obviously I'm not white, but like, other ethnicities and allyship, we can have that too, where it's just like, you want to move and help so much, but it's just like, whoa, where's your intensity coming from? Which direction are you coming from? Why are you choosing that? And also like back up, because this isn't your fight.
Yes.
Like your support, like back up. And like, it's hard to navigate, and it's good to be really aware of those things.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to happen. Like, and like, especially like if you're a person who is automatically like a helper, right? Like you've always been a helper, or you've always been a peacekeeper, like those kind of things, like it will affect how you treat bigger things in your life, and how you move in movements like these. And like, we have to definitely be able to like look at ourselves and be like, well, I just messed that all up. That was really bad. And it's time.
Yeah. Or like thinking back embarrassingly about things that you did in the past that you're like, oh my gosh, I just did not have the knowledge. I did not have the awareness at that point in my life. And and like you're saying, like if you had to be the peacekeeper as a child because you had, a home life that was how you survived, it may play out and it may feel like you're helping, and you may feel like you're being responsive, and that the intention is I'm helping someone, which is not a bad thing, but it's coming from an unhealthy place. It may manifest in a way that is not actually helpful.
And
I think,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm certainly, I am definitely aware that, these are, like I said, this is a real conversation. Like I am fully aware that that's a very easy place to just like step into. And that I'm super grateful that there has been enough real conversation happening and honesty, and that I have enough trust with certain people in my life who would be able to say like, hey, wait just a second. You might want to check that.
Yeah. So, I mean, because again, you are the executive director, right? Like of an organization, like you when you do things, it has more of an influence. Like, and that's a privilege, and it's also like a fact. Like, that's just how it is. You know, you're part of an organization, you guys get grants from the government and stuff. And so, you know, making choices to also like speak up as an organization is also like, that's a choice. Like, that's a choice. So how did that feel for you?
Yeah, I mean, sort of the same as when I was talking about like feeling inept or inadequate to guide my staff through the process of COVID. Like, how am I supposed to do that? Like, you know, how do I do that? And I really felt the same way when this happened. It was like, there is no question. And thank goodness, like, every single person, staff wise, our faculty, our dancers, was like so on the same page. So it felt very clear and obvious that we were going to make a statement of solidarity. We were going to put it out there. We were going to be very direct about it. But more importantly, like, the conversation, it was like that was a given, right? But kind of everybody did that, right? Like, and then the real conversations that we have every week are about what actions are going to back that up. Like, what is the plan? Let's take a hard look at our organization, the systems that we're part of, the privilege that we have, and how do we start to shift it, redistribute it, refocus it, break it down, rebuild it. There's so much we have to learn. And I am not the person to have those answers until I have built enough trust with the community to really get unfiltered, real information about what the desire is, what is actually helpful. I don't know until I listen. So, you know, we put out our statement of solidarity. We came up with a list of like all of the actions that we are going to take to support these points. What does that look like programmatically, artistically, with our staff, with our board, with the branding of our school, with professional development? What resources am I providing to my staff? Clearly, we need like a consultant, you know, that is a DEI consultant to like help us. Like, let's ask the experts. Let's really start chipping away at this. And that is huge. You know, it's like moving a giant system is not going to happen overnight. So, you know, where do you start kind of picking at the edges, and what can you do immediately? And so, you know, it's like we immediately came up with a couple things that were like, we can do this right now. And then we made a bunch of missteps and we moved really fast. Right. And so then, you know, that's the situation that we're in right now. And we're going, okay, all right, we really wanted to do something. We really want to take action because everybody said, yeah, Black Lives Matter on their Facebook page. Then what? Just total silence, you know? So what do? We got to do something. And, you know, I think we're on the right path, and we're definitely like, it's a challenge. It's not easy work, but I mean, that's what everybody says, right? We're going to make mistakes. It's not going to be easy work. It's going to be a long, slow process. You say that, and then when you're in it, you're like, oh, but it still sucks.
Yeah, really exactly. Hard. Yeah, and let's talk about it. So, because again, we're talking about our own community. So you guys put out that, oh my God, ad.
Call for artists.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Call for artists for a choreographic mentor and dancers, and I can't remember the third one, like professional dancers. Professional dancers and teaching artists.
Yeah.
And teaching artists. Okay.
Choreography mentor. Mm-hmm.
Yes, choreography mentor and teaching artists. And you know this, and we can talk about like some of the critiques you got from that, which again, we were talking about this before, where it's just like, sometimes you don't know like what people are saying, and then you think you're doing the right thing, and then all of a sudden, boom, no, it wasn't. And so let's talk about it a little bit. So I know that in the ads, in the call for artists, it was just you were looking for BIPOC people, and you wanted people who were in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, which I feel like to some definitely is just like, yeah, great opportunities for people of color, right? And then like I know some of the critiques were like the wording was really weird. Like the wording, and like some people feel like that's already like tokenizing within itself.
Yeah.
Then there is this is actually this before I forget. So I was talking to one of my friends who's in the community, and so she didn't apply. And her question was like, could Malashok have put the money into better use than funding a BIPOC concert? As much as I love the opportunity for BIPOC artists, the money could have been used for fundraisers, petitions, or the BLM fund to help initiate immediate change.
Right. Great question. You know, I think honestly, like just overall, you know, one of the like general kind of umbrella lessons that I learned from this experience, which has been really valuable, is how important like communicating your process and your context is, because we are partnering with an organization that is creative youth development. And so like the founding principles of that say that the youth are part of every single process. So we received a grant, you know, to do this program last year. So like we wrote the grant 2 years ago.
What was the grant about? What was the grant for?
So the grant is basically the program that we have done for 2 previous years. And they fund, so it's from the California Arts Council, which is the state allocation for arts education funds. And the program is set up so that the youth that are in Transcendence's program are given the like choreography mentorship and like sort of composition lessons, right? Like how do you create choreography if you're a novice dancer and you've never created before? Here's some like tools. These can be applied to any genre, any theme, anything, right? Any dance modality. Then the second half of the program is we send professional dancers in, and those students create work that maybe they're imagining in their head. And the idea was like to fill that gap in dance between what you see in your head that like your peer, your novice dancer, or your student may not be able to actually perform in the way that you're imagining, right? So we're going to give professional dancers to these students, and they will direct the professional dancers and set the work on them, and then do a produced performance, right? So that was the original intent. We've done that for 2 years. So this year, when it came time to start, you know, implementing the program again, the students and alumni came and they said, look, if we're going to be creating choreography, it's going to be responsive to Black Lives Matter and what is happening right now. So we don't want your Malashok dance white bodies to be the dancers. And we want a BIPOC teacher who is familiar with this work to be mentoring us and to create a space. That's the space where we are going to feel safe expressing what we want to express right now. So Malashok said, great, we have funding for a teaching artist and for dancers. Let's shift it. Let's just like redistribute. So it's not going to go to Malashok dancers. It's going to go to, let's open it up to the community, right? So this all sounds fine and dandy. And we're like, great. We all feel like we're on the same page. This is responding to their requests and kind of listening to how they describe the safe space for creativity. Awesome. I think we can make that happen within the restrictions of what this grant funds. Then we had those students write the call, right? And did not provide enough guidance. We did not have an expert review. We did not have, these are young people, and we put that in their hands, and then we didn't do the right thing by like giving it more care before we released it. And so, yes, it was written by youth. Yes, it was written by all BIPOC folks. Yes, that language was offensive to a lot of people. And I wouldn't have caught that because I'm not a person of color, right? Like, I'm not educated enough to like catch those nuances, and where we went wrong. So then it was like, ooh.
Yeah.
Also, it's like we stepped over like a huge part of the process, which is like we should have spent more time educating ourselves before launching into this. We were being so responsive and like reactionary, that we didn't take the necessary steps, and we don't have the trust built with these communities,
Yeah.
and so the relationship isn't there to be able to have an honest dialogue. So people giving feedback, that's going to be super difficult. So like anybody who did give feedback, like bravo to you, because that takes a lot of courage, to kind of like not have a relationship with someone and then give them important but difficult, maybe negative feedback. That's hard. And so I'm so grateful for everyone who did. Otherwise, we would just be like skipping along, and we couldn't fix it.
Yeah, I know one of the things that I've heard from some of my friends too, like one of their biggest critiques too was just like, why are you hiring for people less than you pay your company members?
Right. Which is such an important like thing to acknowledge. We really were looking at like, we have X number, this is the number of, and this is like such an institutional way to look at things, right? Okay, so we have this number of dollars in our budget from this grant to pay dancers. We have this number of choreographers, and they each want this number of dancers. Take this dollar amount, divide it by the number of dancers and hours. That's not the right way to make the decision.
No, especially because like that is insulting. It's really, because like people know how much like the company members get paid.
Exactly.
It's just kind of like that was like really insulting. And it's like hard. Like and that's the thing, like it's, again, I'm glad you're here to talk about it, because like building trust is hard. And again, if like you really mean it, you'll keep going, you'll be honest about it. But
also, it's like you can fix that.
Yeah, you can fix it. And then, but also like knowing that, it's going to take time too for like the community to trust you again, or like even build, it's like that, you try to take a step forward and now it's just like, like,
that's definitely, definitely. It feels that way at times, sure. But those are the types of like that critique, when it was brought to my attention, I was like, that was not the right way to calculate that at all. And then it's like, okay, then we revise it, and all of the applicants got, an updated email that said, never mind, we will. Here is the pay rate. We have adjusted it. So it's something that can be fixed, but like you said, right, it's, the mistake was public. The fixing is not as public. Yeah.
And so how do you go about, well, are there any, I know we were talking about another critique, but I can't remember right now. My brain just went to, like, it's digesting like what you just said. But I mean, let's just put it out there. What are the other critiques that you got?
I mean, I think that's, well, okay. So like I said, a lot of the critiques, okay, let me put it this way. Really, almost none of the critiques came directly to me. So that to me was like a huge indicator that like, oh, right, this is evidence that the trust is not there, right? That we don't have enough of a relationship with the community for them to be honest and upfront with us. So a lot of these critiques came to someone, and then that person had the difficult job of then passing it on to me, you know? And so I think mainly it was really about like the language was weird, seemed a little tokenizing, seemed a little white savior complexy. You don't have like a lot of relationships in the communities that you're calling for. You know, so there was sort of a like, hey, stay in your lane. This is not your work kind of response. Support another organization. Don't try to do it yourself, right? So we heard some of that. We heard, pay rate for sure. Yeah, and then just like there was no context. Like, where is this coming from, right? Like, who's funding this? Where is it coming from? Why are you doing it now? What is this partnership? And it's like, well, we've had this partnership and for a while, it just looked different. And so that's kind of like, those are kind of the main buckets that we got in response. I will say we also got, positive response too. Like, there were people who were like, hey, thanks for trying. Like, thanks for actually like attempting to do something different and actually like taking the chance to put yourself out there in this way and be public about it. Because a lot of what we're seeing is complete inaction or silence, or to be honest, like getting really defensive, which, is, I can be empathetic to that response, but it's like, it's really not productive and it's not where we need to be right now.
Yeah. Like it's so difficult. Like I was talking to this about with other friends too, because it's like, I have friends who are just like, no, this is straight up insulting. And then I was kind of just like, it's a job. Like I'm going to apply, this is something. And then, so it's really interesting because, we all don't blame each other and we can all see each other, but that's also part of it. Like seeing those like power dynamics, right. And the power that you have, like that organizations have, where like there is that disparity, and that's what makes it really difficult, because like I can see how it's just like, yes, creating more opportunities for BIPOC people, that is great, but also like how you do it is also very meaningful as well, which is the hard part. Like, yeah, you guys should have like been more in charge of like the wording and stuff, and even like you said, you're like, yep, we should have hired like a consultant, because it's just like you don't know. And
yeah.
like it's and like I want to say, like, even though like, yeah, there were definitely mistakes, those are definitely mistakes, but I mean I believe you're earnest in what you're trying to do, and so I'm just like, yeah, like at least she tried something, at least they tried something. That's more than other people. And really, like, that trust is going to come back, like we're going to see it whether or not like you guys are actually earnest, like going forward. Like building trust is like a really long thing. Like it's a long journey.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and I say this to like, like I'll have conversations with my friends, especially like the ones who do like content creation, like YouTube and stuff like that. It's like, how do I not be performative? And I'm like, well, don't center it around yourself. And then also like, if you really mean it, you're gonna figure it out, because you're not gonna leave. Like, you're not going to leave the fight. You're just going to, like, take the critiques. You might mess up, and it might be really horrible. Like, like, look to the leaders, look to see what the leaders of the movement are doing. Again, just make sure it's not about yourself, and then, like, let's go from there. But if you really mean it, you'll prove that you actually mean it in time. Like, right. Everyone's so scared of being performative that people aren't doing anything. And I'm like, if you don't do anything and you stay silent, you're basically like on the side of the oppressor, because that's what neutrality does. If you're in this like neutral, weird place of silence, like you're not really doing anything. And that's the thing. Like, it was a really big mistake, but again, at least for me personally, I'm like, at least you tried. I got right. Like, kind of my whole thing. At least you tried, and it sound like, and like we're here talking about the mistakes of it, which can't be easy. And I forgot to ask my question, and I will ask you this after, but it can't be easy, and I know that. And I would like to know, like, you know, how did you actually feel about those critiques? Like, you know, like actually like analyzing them. Like, I'm sure they did not feel great. Like, I'm sure that's like, that's obvious that like
sure.
when they were given to you, like, what did you think about them? Especially like, you know, you're not going to have all the answers, or maybe, I don't know, maybe you do by now, but like, you know, like, what does staying in your lane feel like to you? Like, what do you think people are like alluding to? Besides, I feel like you got like the good whole big thing of like the community doesn't trust, like doesn't trust you right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always difficult, you know, to get, you know, critical feedback. It's difficult for everyone, you know. It doesn't feel good to, you know, work really hard on something and feel like you're taking the right steps, and, you know, kind of feel like, okay, everybody who's in on this is like on the same page and we're going to release this. And then realize like, oh, we really like jumped the gun and did not do this correctly. Like that is hard. And I think you can apply that to like anything, right? Like, okay, I'm going to paint this painting, or I'm going to create a dance. And then you find out that everybody like is like, that was terrible. And we've seen it before, or like, oh, you know, that's not going to feel good. But I also, you know, understand that like, it's not a personal attack on me, that these are critiques to an institution that has benefited from a system. And that is a big thing to shift. And so, you know, it's not a personal thing. Like, it doesn't feel, no, it didn't feel good. Yes, I lost sleep. Yes, I was like absolutely like just devastated and wanted to crawl into a hole, you know. It's like, oh my God, this is not good. And already feeling a little bit like inadequate, right? Of like, well, how do I do this? Like, I'm just trying to figure it out. And like I said, like when you're the ED, like there's no one else to ask. You're the crux of the decision making. And so when you say go, you go. And that means that there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And that, to me, that responsibility is like to say, thank you. Thank you for the feedback. We're going to do better. We're not going to just stop or give up or turn our back or throw our hands in the air and be like, you know, that's it. I guess we tried and we didn't do good enough. It's about like, okay, we got this feedback. Doesn't feel great. However, it's very motivating, you know, and it connected us with an amazing local DEI firm it's owned by a Black woman who's very active in the arts community. Muse Salon, if anybody wants to reference. I mean, just like an amazing opportunity for us to like step back and say, oh, okay, we skipped over some things, and, you know, we have more learning to do. And, you know, that's like my responsibility is to say, thank you for the feedback. We'll do better. you know?
And I mean, like, I feel like that's just like the best attitude you could have about it. Unless, like you said, like, you know, unless you really didn't mean it in the first place, because then it would be like, I mean, for me, I'm like, that's how you could, for me, I'm just like, well, okay, there go the performative people, because this is no longer trending. You know,
Right.
like when it's like, this issue is quote unquote gone, even though it's really not gone. There's just like less media coverage. And so I guess,
and I think like, a lot of like organizations, oh, there you are.
Oh, okay, there you go.
I think a lot of, you know, organizations, especially like modern dance and ballet, that are like very Eurocentric, you know, slices of our dance world, eventually are all going to have these shared missteps and experiences. And hopefully, as as we move on, there will be more like awareness of what resources are there to help you support and amplify, but not step out of your lane and do something that is not your work to do. But I think it'll hopefully and that's, obviously I'm sure there were a ton, I don't know, I'm sure there are a lot of people who even just saw that you were going to have me on and was like, why the hell is she on there? And what business does she have talking about any of this? Right. But I think normalizing the fact that there is a call to action for white-led organizations, and to normalize having conversations, normalize the fact that guess what, these organizations are going to make mistakes and we need your input, and hopefully that helps ease people into again, it's me being a white person calling in another white person,
or calling them out if they need it,
or calling them out, it's the same thing with with organizations. Hopefully we will start to help each other and say, hey, learn from my mistake, don't do that.
Yeah, you're kind of
here's a great consultant, work with them.
Yeah, you're kind of like a guinea pig, and I mean, that's not an easy place to be. But you're going, and it's cool that you got a consultant, and I mean, you're working, you have a great attitude about it. Yeah, at some point we all gotta move on, and that's the thing. It's just to everyone who's skeptical, I get that too. Everything is just kind of. Right now, our whole world is skeptical about everything. And so, those receipts are either going to show in the future or they're not. And that's just kind of where we are. I personally am very much yeah, let's have these conversations, because it's especially Malashuk is one of the quote unquote biggest dance organizations, and that you guys get funding from the city. You're one of the ones who get that. And you can't just. You have to talk about it. It exists. It's real. Acknowledging the privilege around it, acknowledging the disparities. That's part of the conversation, which is why, again, thank you for coming on here. And talking about it all. It's not necessarily the most fun conversation. But it just needs to happen. You guys made a mistake. It was really bad. And that can't be something that we shame people for out of allyship or trying. It's just it needs to be the proper amount of holding people accountable.
Yeah.
Holding people accountable has to be it. Being able to give feedback. I hope people at least trust you enough going forward, or I hope slowly you gain people's trust so they can just say it to your face.
Yeah. And be willing, to be part of a panel or a planning process. We need those voices. We need that sense of dialogue.
Yeah.
Desperately.
And it's so hard because it's I don't know. I'm trying to think about if I was in your position, those things can be even difficult too, right? How do you what makes the difference between reaching out to people and tokenizing people? What the hell is that? What is the difference for that? There are all these different things, and it's going to be really hard. And more likely than not, you're going to have more missteps. But I mean, I have my missteps too. And I asked myself that too. I'm okay, Trixie, where is this cut? Where are these ideas coming from? What part of this is good? What part of this is a knee-jerk reaction? And just trying to clarify those questions for myself so I don't make those missteps, but they're going to happen anyways. I'm sure people won't be happy with me. They already haven't been happy with me for other things. And so it's just it's kind of part of it. It's just you got to learn, you got to go. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm glad you think of this as that you want to meet the challenge and you want to earn the community's trust, and you don't think you just have it. Because I think that's part of the hard defensive part, which just means just with anyone, not just organizations, but even family and stuff like that, right? Just well, I'm not racist.
Right.
Like, I'm not racist. Like,
Right.
I'm not racist, so it's fine. And it's really like, no, it's not fine. Like, we need to talk about things. We need to actually like look at our behavior and see like how we have a hand in systemic racism, because if we all did it, then it wouldn't be working. Like,
right. And I feel like that's one of the things that has been so different about this surge, this movement that's happening right now, is that people are talking very candidly and openly and honestly.
More people are talking more candidly, openly, and honestly. Like, yeah.
You know, and that's helping. Like, that's a big component, you know, and that's productive and that's helpful. So I'm grateful for that. And, you know, just like I said, it's like you just keep listening and learning and apologize and take accountability when you need to. And then at the end of the day, all missteps, you know, that have been made will be acknowledged. But I can say that no matter what happens, like, the money went from the state, passed through Malashok, and it is going to go into the pockets of people that before this would not have seen that money. So it's like, that is a measurable, like, thing that is going to.
Yeah. And it's going to, yeah. And it's great. Like, you know, like, it's going to be an ongoing conversation. It's going to be really hard for all of us in our allyship, like, you know, knowing that it's an uncharted territory and knowing that it's going to take a long time. Like, I mean, it is, but like, that's a good thing. That's a thing, because it's going to take a long time because we're trying to actually change how things are done, right? Like, that's like the goal. It's like, let's actually change like the system, which involves a lot of things. Like, like, it's like, for a dance community, it's going to go above like just the organizations, right? It's going to go above the organizations. We're going to have to look at like, too, like, the people who are funding these organizations. What are they doing? What is their process?
What is their priority? What are they restricting you from spending your money on or not spending your money on? And what is, you know.
Yeah. And then going up each level to be like, well, who's responsible for them? Who's checking on them? Who's like making sure like the community is actually being serviced? So it's so interesting. And you are one level of the dance organization. So it's been great to have this conversation. It's been over an hour and I just realized that now. So we're gonna wrap it up. But thanks for coming on. I mean, I know, again, like, it wasn't an easy talk, but I'm glad you have it. I'm glad you're trying to be transparent. It's not easy being a leader, and I'm, you know, like, I'm rooting for you. I think you're in earnest, and I think, you know, like, and again, it's all going to be proven at the end. Like, we're going to see organizations like drop out, like become quiet again, or what. And so, I mean, yeah, I keep going. I'm glad you're going. I'm glad you're taking the critiques. Like, you know, definitely like keep listening. Follow like the leaders of BLM and like our BIPOC communities, and I think it's gonna, like, hopefully it will be fine. Again, I feel like I personally believe in earnest, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to make mistakes. So, I mean,
thank you for this opportunity to come on and talk, and I just appreciate it like so much. Just the whole dialogue and what you're doing, and this whole platform is, it's important work, and I know that it's a lot, you know, but I'm honored and grateful.
Yeah, well, yeah, like, it's really cool. Like, it's cool. Like, I want more conversations with our community. So if anyone from our community is watching, like, and you haven't, or even if you have come on already and we just haven't talked about this specifically, then you're welcome to come on, contact me. They just like have to happen, and people need to know. And, you know, like, part of leading in our community, and this is for everyone at every level, right? Like, being leaders in our community is definitely partly like admitting to our mistakes, saying things that did happen, being honest, and then like trying to move on, because that's like, again, like, the defensiveness isn't helpful, because then we never get to move on from where people think they are. So yeah, thanks for being here. That was fun.
Thank you.
It was cool to talk. I mean, it was really honest, so I enjoyed that. And yeah, and for everyone who's watching, like, thanks for tuning in. again, if you're anyone from the community and you want to come on and talk about it, like I'm serious. Like again, like I'm living here. This is where I live. This is where I intend to stay. So you know, if that's you too, let's have a conversation about it. Like how to make our dance community better, like actually better. And no, like you know, talks are just like a part of it. Being public about things are just a part of it. But I think it's also like a really important part. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. Molly, again, thanks for being here. Until next time, make sure all of you are taking care of yourselves. It's been a while in quarantine, so make sure you're really taking care of yourself. For me personally, it's getting harder and harder. So know if that's you too, like you're not alone in that. And we just really need to focus on our support systems, continue to build them, and continue to take care of ourselves. Yeah. That's it. Dun, 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 dun. Bye, everyone.